can't say. Good morning, everyone. You all settled? Welcome to Compare the Market. It's our first breakfast event, but probably one of many. There's probably a few things I should go through in terms of health and safety. Hopefully somebody knows what they are. We've only been here about a month. Oh, shit, sorry. Sorry, guys.
Swearing.
We have fire exits that way, so if you hear, we have quite a modern fire test alarm system. This voice will come on, it will speak very loudly and tell you that there may be a problem. If that does come on, we'll exit via the stairs there, or by the stairs by the lifts. Obviously we don't use the lifts as always. And we gather outside in the little courtyard where you see the green plants and the big statue of the guy with the puffer jacket on. I don't know what the importance of him is, but that's where we gather. So welcome this morning. We have 3 really good talks. The reason we're doing this morning, which you guys need to be aware of, is we're trying to find a senior Android developer. I'm not going to be subtle about it. We've been trying to find that person for 9 months, and we will pay handsomely to anyone who comes forward, either themselves for the role, or if they know someone who would like the role, please talk to our guys, Matthew, Sherelle, anyone. Yeah. So welcome. I think we can crack on. Paul Williams first. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again to everybody for coming. I just wanted to do a very quick intro. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Phil Bateman. I run TRG, which is a technology recruitment business. We set up the Agile Roundabout about a year ago to try and facilitate discussion within the technology community. We were hearing very similar conversations come out of different industries, and we thought it would be great to set up a platform to share that knowledge. Before I crack on into the speakers, I just wanted to kind of find out, this is the first breakfast meetup that we've run. Can I just have a show of hands whose first Agile Roundabout this is? It's quite a lot. And maybe another show of hands, is that because the time of day works better for you? And maybe a show of hands is if it's because the content was particularly appealing? Okay. And what about if it was just for a free breakfast? Okay, cool. A big thank you to Sherelle and Matthew for agreeing to host this. It's brilliant offices. We're really excited to be hosting it here. We have 3 great speakers. We have Jack Wall, who's the mobile tech lead here at Compare the Market, who's going to talk us through some stuff on mobile incident handling. Anish Patel, who's a digital CIO at Lloyds Banking Group, just sharing some learnings about Lloyds' mobile transformation over the last year, 18 months. And Paul Stringer, who's the head of mobile from actually regular Agile Roundabout contributors, equal experts, and they're going to talk about Agile in a mobile engineering and delivery environment. So thanks very much for turning up, and I'll pass it over to Jack.
Morning everybody, thanks for making it down here, especially so early in the morning. So my name is Jack Wall. As we said, I'm the mobile tech lead here at Compare the Market. Brief introductions. Hopefully we're all aware of Compare the Market. We're one of the largest brands for online insurance comparison. More relevant to this crowd though, we do work for the mid-cats. It's always the first question. We build our teams very product focused and very small. By small, it's usually between 6 to 8 engineers. And we are committed to Agile methodology across the business. That's why today we're hosting you guys here in London, and we also host Agile Peterborough at our Peterborough office. As was mentioned, the main reason why we're in this new office is we are rapidly growing. As a small example, the mobile team in the past month or so has doubled in size from 4 to 8 engineers, and we are still actively hiring. Again, to push the point home, specifically Android, we really need help with this. But anyway, just if you're generally interested in tech and you want a great place to work with some really difficult challenges, come talk to us after the talk. Me specifically, my role here is looking after the tech side of our movies product. For those that aren't familiar with the Movies proposition, it's a loyalty offer we give to our customers who are eligible. They're able to get 2-for-1 cinema tickets every week for an entire year. But more importantly, our app is positioned to be the cinema-going app in the UK. So it's a great place to find all your trailers, latest movies, and book cinema tickets straight from the application. In terms of impact on our customers, the application hasn't been out for too long, I think it's about 18 months now. We have over 2 million downloads, and this stat is old, but it's the only public stat I can find. For 1 week in August last year, we saved our customers over £900,000 just on cinema tickets. So it's not a core business proposition initially, but it has a big impact. And more importantly, it's only the beginning of CTM on mobile. It's a very important first step in a very ambitious project. So I'm here to talk about incident handling. Specifically, I want to deal with that on mobile because there are some mobile-specific considerations to keep in mind. Brief background on incident handling, why it's important. The idea is that we want to restore services to our customers as soon as possible should the worst happen. We want to do that by building a framework and workflow for managing incidents throughout their entire life cycle. That's from when they're first detected all the way through to their resolution and beyond. The framework I'm going to talk about in process here isn't necessarily what we use to compare the market, it's just a general framework that applies to most that I've seen over the years. The other great benefit that you get from having a strong framework in place is transparency, both internally and externally. The worst thing that can happen when an incident does happen is your customers lose trust and confidence in your product. Being transparent by having a clear workflow really helps with this. And we also want to reduce the impact of incidents. That's the impact on our customers, on our development teams, and on the company as a whole. And this also helps with staff utilization as part of that, reducing the impact, so that we make sure we only engage the correct teams at the right time and only for the minimum amount of time necessary. And at the end of the day, it's all about better customer satisfaction. So, mobile considerations to keep in mind, compared to web and back-end solutions, we have incredibly slow release processes. I speak to web teams that push 20, 30 releases a day. In mobile, you're lucky to do one a fortnight. And this is a really important with incident handling. It means that we have to be very confident with any fixes that we push to production. We can't afford to just try something, get customer feedback, see if it works or not, and go back to market with another fix. And that usually means that we have to do a lot more upfront work in the earlier stages of this process. As another side of that, we also have very progressive rollout compared to web and backend. So it can take anywhere from a week or two for any updates to go live to customers I've seen in the past. And that's only if customers have automatic updates. If your customers disable automatic updates, forget about it. They may never receive your fixes or patches. So for operational incidents, that's not such a big deal. But for any incidents in your actual mobile code base, that's something you really need to be aware of and very careful about. The other rather unique position we have is the differences between the platforms we usually support on mobile, namely Android and iOS. This means, again, your overheads during investigation and resolution phases are going to be that much greater. We all know as well, on mobile we live and die by our user reviews and ratings, and there's nothing that generates 1-star ratings better than an incident. So managing your customers and being very transparent with them about what's happening is hugely important. There is a little bit, it's getting better on mobile with alpha and beta channels, which allow you to shortcut a lot of these issues of rolling out to production. The caveat being that's only helpful if you have a sample of affected users in your alpha and beta channels, which is a very hard thing to do, convincing customers to do that. The general workflow for incident handling all starts with the identification stage. So this is where we first detect that there may be an incident. This can come from a variety of sources. It may be a direct customer support query. It could be a sudden influx of bad reviews and ratings that you see on the Play Store. It may just be something as simple as crash reports, which are usually the biggest indicator. Or abnormalities in your analytics are also a very good source of finding the harder to find incidents. Regardless of the source, the important thing is that you record the the potential incident straight away, collect as much early data as you possibly can, and if it seems worrisome, make sure you escalate the issue and notify people, parties of potentially the relevant teams, so that we can keep track, because the important thing is trying to spot patterns. Not all incidents are as obvious as a server going down. Once we finish with the identification, we move on to the analysis and evaluation stage. The idea here is we want to have our initial engagement with customers if we know that there are affected customers. This is where you usually send out your standard troubleshooting questionnaire. What devices are they using? What operating system are they on? What version of the application? And you also want to take that information and then review your existing knowledge base, your existing customer support knowledge base. Because although you might not find the exact same incident from before, it's guaranteed there's going to be a lot of useful stuff there that will help you categorize and prioritize any incoming incidents. And prioritization is really important at an early stage, so that before this incident is raised with actual development production product teams, they know how to react accordingly. You don't want to make everything a really high priority incident because you'll just be forever chasing the tail. And this covers the basic what, where, when, why, and who for any given issue. That's pretty much how far customer support is involved. It then goes on to the actual development and product teams to perform a deeper investigation. This will involve reviewing logs, reviewing crash reports. It's going to involve, ideally you want to take the whole relevant team into a room and just have a big brainstorming session. That involves engineers, product owners, SDETs, BAs, anybody you can. Just get everybody in a room and thinking out loud about the problem. Don't just assign it to a developer and say, you've got this problem, go fix it. Because you'll find they make a lot of false assumptions. It's also important that you review any other potentially affected systems. If you get an issue come in for your mobile application saying the customer is unable to sign in, could well be there's an issue with your sign-in service, and that's going to have a much bigger impact across your approach. It could be affecting web and a larger audience than you're expecting. So do review other related systems. Reviewing recent changes is the first thing that everybody does. Don't just look at recent changes in your product, also look at third-party services that you integrate into, any library updates that have happened, even environmental changes. So a common one here is operating system updates or new devices coming to market. You'll be surprised at how much people can break things that are out of your control. And the main idea here is that it's not an operational issue, or even if it is to come up with a set of reproducible steps. You want to be sure that before you start solving the problem, you can reproduce it with 100% accuracy, hopefully. So again, that we can have high level of confidence in our solution before we try to roll out to market. The development team will then move on to the resolution. This slide's quite bare because this is really going to depend on the individual issue and what kind of area that affects. But generally if it's software issues, if it's bugs, just follow standard development practices at this stage. Don't do anything unusual, don't rush any fixes, follow standard TDD. Start with your breaking tests that you build up from your reproducible steps, and make sure you write regression tests as well, which we'll come back to later. The only things to point out here is really advise when handling the resolution of an incident that you halt any planned releases. What you don't want to do is either compound the issue or change your production environment between the investigation stage and the resolution stage, because you basically wipe out a lot of the investigation. A lot of the data is just no longer valid. And please never raise an incident into an existing sprint for your development teams. Either if it's a low priority incident, find time between sprints so that your team can have dedicated time for dealing with the problem. Or if it's high severity, consider just halting your current sprints, just stop all work and just get everybody dealing with the incident that's necessary. Once you've finished with resolving the problem, it's obviously important to close it off. More importantly is reporting. So if this involves any releases, especially on mobile, make sure you get that out as soon as possible. but only when you have that high level of confidence. You want to make sure that you update your customer support knowledge base so that, again, any queries coming in from customers during this rollout process can be handled straight away. Like, as I said, rollout process can take a while. You don't want your incidents log piling up because your customer support team don't know that the issue has been resolved. Make sure you document all your learnings. It's guaranteed that if you have a problem system, you're going to have another problem at some point. It's just a matter of time. So make sure you document everything that you learn, and more importantly, you share that documentation. This is a process, it's a workflow, so it's always going to be improving as long as you feed back into it. Make sure as well that you do thorough customer support outreach. And generally that's twofold. One, you want to do a general customer outreach just to make sure everybody knows, hey, part of that transparency, we've had an incident, this is what the issue was, this is how we solved it, everything should be good now. But also on an individual basis. If you're able to reach out to individual affected customers and let them know one by one, hey, we know you had this problem, it's now resolved, you're going to have a much better reaction from these things. It is also very important to have a review meeting with your relevant stakeholders. Just again, make them aware of the whole process you've gone through and the outcomes of each stage. And we'll come on to why and the learnings of why that's important. The general feel for here we're trying to go for is closing those loops, both internally and externally. And last but most importantly is reviewing and monitoring post-incident closure. The easiest way to review it on an ongoing basis is just to improve your logging around the affected problem areas. It's the easiest and cheapest thing we can do. But from that we can generate an alert system so that should the worst happen and we have a reoccurrence, we'll be notified of it much, much quicker. Hopefully before customers start ringing the alarm bells. Those regression tests that we wrote in the resolution stage, make sure you make that part of your CI/CD systems going forwards, so that we don't accidentally reintroduce the problem. And as with the incident identification phase, do continue to monitor your customer support and ratings and reviews to see the trend change. Don't just assume that you fixed it because a few of your customers say it works. Keep monitoring it and make sure that your numbers go in a much better direction. And usually this involves new technical work, whether it's new code, new services, new load balancers if it's a back-end operational problem. Do be aware that everything that you release can affect other systems. The resolution of most incidents is usually more code. As we all know, code causes bugs, causes incidents, so don't just fire and forget. So, luckily, since I've been at Compare the Market, we haven't really had any incidents on the mobile team, but I come from an early stage startup background, so I've had my fair share of rather catastrophic incidents. I'm willing to share war stories after the talk. But I've learned a lot of things along the way. First of all, I've learned that when you have these, so I talked a lot about having heavy sessions during the investigation phase. Now, yes, having a lot of people in a room for a prolonged amount of time, focusing on one specific issue, would generate a lot of bad ideas, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of pulling at random threads that, oh, maybe the user had the app open and they got an operating system update, then they rooted their device and deleted all of their data manually, which is never the case, but everybody will always suggest that. But that's fine, because what we're doing here is we're just trying to fire as many ideas out as possible, so that later on we can, so when we're trying to find the root cause, usually it's not the first thing that you suspect. So the more ideas that you have, as terrible as they are, the closer you're getting to the real cause. This is a really important one. Customers are usually really happy to help if you engage them and you engage them early. I've seen a lot of companies that just close up during an incident. They just shut down everything. They disable their Twitter feed. They just stop doing anything or communicating to anybody until they've resolved the problem. The best way to solve problems is get your customers engaged. That may be as simple as having them fill out troubleshooting questionnaires, or getting them to sign up to your alpha and beta programs. But more importantly, as I've seen a lot of times on mobile, they're usually very happy to amend reviews and ratings post-closure of incidents. So when you get that influx of one-star reviews, I can't sign into the app, or it's crashing every time I open it, reach out to them, be very transparent from a very early stage, And more often than not, they'll be willing to change it. And you'll be surprised you end up with a lot of 5-star reviews if you do this. A lot of great customer support, great feedback, very great company. Had some problems which we resolved. And that makes a massive impact for any product. This is just a general principle, but it does especially apply for incident handling, is engaging your important stakeholders really early on to alleviate any pressure that you may feel from them. Usually when you feel pressure during an incident, it's because people don't feel like they have a good overview of exactly what's going on and what the current state is. So you'll find people tapping you on the shoulder every 2 minutes, how's it going, how's it going, have we fixed it, have we fixed it. If you use a framework like this where everything is in very well-defined stages with clear outcomes, then you'll find that a lot of that goes away once just people are aware of exactly what's happening. And more importantly, only a fraction, very, very small fraction of affected customers will ever report an issue. I've had cases where we've only had 3 or 4 support tickets come in for an issue that was affecting thousands of customers. It was a really serious issue. It was stopping customers from using our product. But just make sure you have all the tools in place for that identification process, and you do document the knowledge base and everything, so that you can spot patterns really early. Earlier the better, obviously. But sometimes incidents can go without being noticed for a very long time. And that's all from me. Any questions?
Severity of incident, and you pull the whole team into it. Is severity ones that will ever report to?
Yeah, it can depend on business, and severity is also very dependent on business. It may be incidents that have financial impact for your customers or for your business, but generally, so this is an issue of bug handling. It's specifically incidents. Generally, if it's an incident, it's severe enough that you want to get at least the entire affected team into a room. And again, as I say, that would be everywhere from the developers and SDevs to the VAs and product owners. Even if it's only for a few hours on the day, it's quite disruptive to the workflow, but because we have such slow iterative processes on mobile, it's really important that we have that very clear understanding. If you follow mobbing practices during the development of the resolutions, well, all the better. Just more heads. And it doesn't need to be too severe to do that. I would do that even on low priority incidents.
Can you just elaborate on how you use apps as part of your tools?
Yes, sorry.
And specifically what you do to surface permissions for recording?
Recording, yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question. So there were tools going on those slides. If you want to know more about those, come grab me and ask me. They're part of. Don't have enough time to talk through them all at the moment. But AppSee, so AppSee is a session recording solution for mobile. So what you're able to do is you're able to go there and view actual recordings of your customers using your products. It's really good for the investigation phase. So usually when we know that users have issues signing in, for example, go find a sample of customers on AppSee, especially where you can see that they've dropped off in the sign-in flow. Go watch the recording, see what happens. A lot of customers will just say, like, it didn't work. I got an error message. Don't know what it said. Close me out. And you don't know, is that a network issue? Is it just a regular system error? What is it? You go to review those recordings, you'll find out a lot more than your customer will ever remember. As for permissions handling, just the same way you'll handle any other permissions, do it progressively, make it clear why it's there, and more importantly for something like AppSee, and AppSee does support this, give them a clear way to opt out, and only ever target the small sample of your users for something like that. And AppSee has a bunch of best practices for integration, so making sure that you hide any sensitive information and data, and they'll help work with you to review that. I've only used session recording systems a few times in the past, and yeah, generally customers don't like it at first, and they don't like to see it, but you'll always get a few people that have it enabled, and any recordings you get are massively important. Yeah.
From a mobile result, very specific
There we go.
difficulties of this telemetry,
Yep.
tracking, logging onto your system and stuff like that, which you need. So what process is more complex to get those analytics, those logins back to you, which you can distribute to a user so that you can go through the back end of your flow, which is communicating back to the user. It's what the
Yeah, absolutely. So with most mobile products, especially where you have large incidents, you usually have backends that you integrate into as well, so make sure you have plenty of logging on those. On mobile, there are plenty of logging solutions. So we're actually integrating here a service called Spunk, which lets us send a lot of random log files to. We also have Crashlytics and analytics packages. We use GA that helps us track users and their interactions through the application. The tricky thing, there was mentioned on one of the previous slides, part of the investigation is to collect all the logs and data that you do have, but often you're missing a lot of logs. So if you do have access, if you do have a back-end system that you have access to, during the investigation stage you want to add more logs to your system around the affected area, so you can collect from there. And it's when you're developing your product, before you get to the incident, make sure that every feature and screen that you work on has good analytics events in there, has Crashlytics built in by default, and that you log any vital system you have logging around. Now there's client-side logging, but there's also server-side logging. There's not just Spunk, there's also services like log entries where you can send mobile logs to, so you don't have to ask your customers for it. Because usually by default, people just log to the user's device and then ask their customers for those logs afterwards. Almost never happens. I've never had that work. But yeah, it's difficult on that.
Given that you're likely to be a group of fairly technically motivated people, how do you introduce kind of a more normal set of users into your testing?
Yep, so a great way to introduce customers to alpha and beta, there's two main prongs for this, and it can be hard to get customers onto those to test early builds. Outside of incidents, the best way is because you basically sell it to them as they get early access to new features and functionality. Make it seem like they're getting something new, fresh, it's exclusive. Even pitch it as that. For a subset of our customers, if you contact us, we may invite you to our VIP program. You get features 2 months before everyone else. Basically, you're just getting them on the alpha and beta. Also, when there is an incident happening, reach out to those affected customers, and at that point, invite them. As I said, customers are usually really happy to help, especially when they're suffering from a problem. So that's a good point to get them onto your alpha and beta and say, look, can you help us solve your problem? And once you're then on that program, you're going to have exclusive features.
And then going on from that, you said that often incidents mean that you will add more tracking in GA, etc. How do you stop it getting too big? Where do you start with logging?
Absolutely. So specifically, I mentioned adding more logging. So this is usually around developer logs. So that's for Splug or log entries. Generally, if you work on developer logs, they are very big and messy. But you ignore them until there's a problem, and then you search through them. Generally, you don't want to add more analytics to do incident tracking or issue tracking. Analytics are there for VAs usually. It's there for analyzing flows. Try not to push any kind of debugging logs that direction, because you're right, it does get really messy and it's usually irrelevant for the users of those systems. It's often a shortcut, but try to avoid it as much as you can. Yep.
We'll just have one more question, and then Jack's available for conversation afterwards, so then we can just get the speakers to.
I will be.
In terms of metrics, time to recovery and time between failures, which one would you look at and which was more important to look at?
Time to recovery is where I tend to focus mostly. It may be just because I'm dealing with the tech side, but time to recovery is really important, especially how you communicate that from a mobile standpoint, because like I said, it's a lot slower than on web and on back end, and you need to make sure that everybody understands why, and that when you're reporting on that metric, you give a lot more background of what makes up that metric, specifically for your team. But that's where I focus most of my time. and reducing that as much as possible. But also, with that is also the rate of reoccurrence. Because usually if your time to recovery is really, really quick, it's because you put in kind of a little stopgap, a little patch that temporarily solves the problem. So do keep an eye out on the recurrence. And that's it. But